Good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's virtual Wormwood Scrubs Charitable Trust Committee meeting. Thank you for coming to this earlier meeting time. Obviously, when we set the meeting time for this meeting, we had high hopes that England would be more successful than they have been in the football, but that's not to be. However, we will still try and be done so that those residents who would like to watch the football can watch France versus Morocco at 7. I'd like to remind all participants of a few housekeeping points. Please keep your microphones muted unless you are speaking. Please wait until I call on you before speaking, and please could officers introduce themselves when they first address the committee. My name is Councillor Alex Anderson and I chair the committee this evening. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. I don't think we have any apologies for absence to note. Steve Hollingworth, one of the officers, is trying to join us, so we will note that he is trying to join, but not that he is late at this point. Declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest that they need to make for tonight's meeting? Can I assume fine? Fine. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Do the members approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of September 2022? Miriam?
Approved.
I just wanted to make one correction, if I can, which is on page 7 in the OPD DC local plan section, at the bottom of paragraph 4 of that section. It said Miriam Shea added that the local plan had been on discussion for a long time with a number of proposals being raised in the process. I think what I actually said, albeit I said it in a slightly convoluted, polite way, was that the OPDC had not to this point met with the Wormwood Scrubs Charitable Trust. So if we could correct that, that would be great. Thank you.
Fine, thank you. Anything else on the minutes? Or are we happy to approve those? I'm going to assume that they're all fine and those are agreed. Item 4 on the agenda, Wormwood Scrubs Charitable Trust annual report and financial statements for year ended 31st of March 2022. Steve, I think you've joined us, which is lovely. So could I ask Steve Hollingworth and Nick Falcone to introduce the reports?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and apologies for my IT issues. So this is the annual report, as you say. It is for 21-22, not currently. So it's sort of a bit historic, but yeah, it covers the financial year till end of March last year. Nick will cover the financial bits, but really the key highlights are the fact that we did have a good surplus. We did get strong funding from Kensington Academy, and we did project and move forward the master plan, which is further on the agenda. We also engaged with the OPDC you've just been talking about. Also, we had a new grounds maintenance contract secured and continue to work with the Friends, and I appointed Osama now, who's with us, and we agreed that we would get that appointment in place to move forward more strategic development for the Scrubs. So those are the highlights really for the year, but I'll hand over to Nick to go over the financial issues.
Okay, thanks for that, Steve. So I'm Nick Falcone. I'm the senior corporate accountant at Hammersmith and Fulham Council. So yeah, as Steve has alluded to, the full 21-22 accounts for the trust are provided at the end of the trustees report, so it's from page 19 onwards. Some of the key figures from the accounts. Yes, there was a surplus of £92,592. This is up to the year ended 31st of March 22. Yeah, healthy surplus, but bearing in mind that some of the income is short-term in nature, so that the Kensington Aldridge Academy lease is not likely to be a long-term source of income. So we've got to bear that in mind when considering the surplus made. So as a result of this surplus, the trust now has unrestricted income funds of £1,030,000. Sorry, £1,030,969 as at the end of 21-22. The trust also has restricted funds, which comprise of the car park, valued at historic cost of £5 million, as well as a nominal value of £1 for the other land and buildings on the site. So we've just had our accounts audited by MHA McIntyre Hudson. So we've been working with Stuart Mackay, who's on the call, and his team. They've produced an audit findings report, which is in Appendix B. So actually, I'd just like to take this opportunity to sort of welcome Stuart and ask if there's anything he wants to add around the audit and how it went.
Thanks, Nick. Chair, is it okay if I present my report now as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Has anyone got any questions up to this point, or should we take them at the end? Fine. No, that's great. Thank you. Over to you, Stuart.
Thanks, Chair. So thanks, Nick and Carmen, for producing the draft accounts. And as Nick's pointed out, we have audited those. So I will go through our audit findings report that we present to you now. In summary, this report outlines the nature and the scope that we've undertaken during the audit. It talks about the qualitative aspects of accounting practices and financial reporting. It talks about the adjusted and unadjusted misstatements. Those are the changes that we have or have not made to the draft accounts that were presented to us for audit by Nick. It talks about matters such as fraud and error that we need to bring to your attention, any modification that is going to go on with our audit report, any material weaknesses that we've identified within the internal control system, and any other matter that we are required to bring to your attention. Before I go too far into the report, I just need to talk about our independence as auditors, and that can be sometimes compromised by the level of non-audit work that an auditor performs for you. We do not perform any non-audit services for the trust, and therefore we retain our independence as your auditors. Section 2 of the report, namely 2.3, does highlight some important levels of responsibilities outlined for both the trustees of the trust and as ourselves as auditors. So I'll just quickly talk about section 3 of the report, which is a feedback on our audit plan. So the first two columns were presented in our audit planning memorandum, and the third column there is the resolution, the outcome. So in terms of the work that we've done over income recognition and the car park, we're happy to say that the audit work was performed as planned, and we haven't got any exceptions to report back. In terms of the other rental income, there has been an unadjusted misstatement that we've identified this, and historically we actually report on this every year. There is a timing difference between the hospital car park income and the charity's year end. They're not coterminous, and so there's always a small cut-off item in there. Each year we always deem it to be very small, so it's not worth changing all of the accounts for it, and it carries over to the following year. In section 3, we have our expenditure note. The first set of draft accounts presented to us had a very, very tiny level of other expenditure included within there. That essentially is reserved really for the loss on disposal of tangible fixed assets according to the accounting standards. It didn't relate to a loss of a tangible fixed asset, so therefore it was reclassified within support costs. Nick has now made that adjustment, hence you don't see any other income, other expenditure within the accounts that Nick's presented. Section 4, as Nick mentioned there, you've still got the Kensington Aldridge Academy lease in there. There's just a bit of additional disclosure we put in there about, it's within note 2, about how long that lease has left to run, indicating that essentially there's £82,000 worth of rental income due to come under that lease in the preceding financial year. And then finally, in terms of section 5, this is a historical way in which the trust has treated its restricted funds for the HS2 project. Some charities, and historically it's a sort of standard practice to present your SOFA in a columnar format. Because you only have one restricted fund, the trust has historically deemed it not material to present a fund that essentially represents just the HS2 income and expenditure. The two match off each other, so there's no surplus or deficit created, and so it's simply explained in the notes. That's an area of judgment that we just need to highlight as part of our report. We're content with it, but we just highlight it to you. So in terms of audit status, we are ready to sign our audit report, and that follows your approval of the signed accounts, your confirmation of the going concern assessment. Going concern means that the trustees consider that the charity will remain in as a live business within the foreseeable future, and what the foreseeable future means is roughly at least 12 months from the date of signing the report. So that goes to December 2023. You conclude that assessment normally based on the level of funds that the charity holds. The bank balance is relatively considerable now, and as Nick pointed out, you've also got assets in excess of £5 million that are sat on the balance sheet. Finally, the other thing we ask you to sign is the letter of representation. This is a letter that we write on your behalf every year. It contains lots of standard paragraphs in there confirming certain things to us. The important bit to point out in there is there are no non-standard representations that we've asked to be made in the letter. So it is purely a standard letter, very similar to the one that you signed last year. So in terms of our audit findings, good news is we do not have any fraud or error that we need to bring to your attention. The accounting policies and the accounting estimates are all in line with our expectation, and we have not identified any significant weaknesses in internal control that we need to bring to your attention. As a result, our audit report will be unmodified. Section 5 deals with those misstatements, and there has only been one, and that relates to that element of other expenditure that was reclassified on the face of the SOFA, £1,444. As I mentioned there, Nick has now reallocated that to support costs. It has no effect on the surplus in the year. I also mentioned there disclosure adjustments. We put in there a point about the expiry of the lease with Kensington Aldridge Academy within note 2 of the accounts. And the only non-adjusting item was, as I mentioned before, in relation to the car park income of 6,300. That is not deemed to be material, so its omission does not affect the overall true and fair state of the accounts. The fees are what they said they were going to be, as the audit was conducted in a smooth and efficient manner, and we've given some links for some sector developments that can be found on our website. I'm more than happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Stuart. That was a very thorough go through of the audit. Can I ask if anyone has got any questions on the audit, or if we're happy to approve? Great, lovely. I think that's all approved then, and I assume I will sign that separately. Lovely. All right, Stephen, was that a wave?
I just wanted to say well done to the internal finance team, as well as thanks to the auditors. It's very nice to have it all so clean and straightforward.
It is, and it's much better than it has been in previous years as well, not with MHA. So thank you very much, everyone, for all the work on that. Lovely, great, okay. Is there anything else on this item before I move on to manager's report?
No, I don't believe so. Don't believe there's anything else, Councillor.
That's lovely. All right. Fine. Stuart and Nick, thank you so much for coming. You're welcome to stay until the end. Nick, you may want to stay until the end, but I don't know if you need to. But Stuart, do feel free to head off now.
That's very kind of you. Have a good evening.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Nice to see you. Goodbye.
Right, agenda item 5. Oh, Stephen, is that a new hand?
It is, please. There are a couple of relatively minor matters arising from the minutes, which aren't anywhere, I think, on the agenda, really, because there are so many other things on the agenda, partly. Is this the appropriate moment to?
No, I think that would have been when we were approving the minutes. Would have been.
Well, I did raise my hand, but you quite rightly rushed on to the accounts.
Oh, I didn't see it, I'm afraid.
I'll
we
deal
do
with them separately later. Okay.
Fine, let's do it as AOB. Fine. Okay, agenda item 5, manager's report. Steve, is this Steve or Osmo who's taking this one?
I think it'll be a combination of myself, Osama, and Vicky. And I'll start with the HS2 update, which hopefully everybody thinks is good news, that the hoardings now for the Stamford Brook sewer, if you've been up on the scrubs, are being removed, and there's Harris fencing up, and there is topsoil and seed being leveled out and planted from the eastern side, from the Hammerhead going to the west. Some of us went to the site last Thursday to with BVVS to have a look what was going on and to agree that we were happy with proceedings. I think the only thing to say, which is not on the report, is that the planting of seed requires a bit of well, it doesn't require frost. It needs to be 6 degrees, so they won't plant the seed until the temperature increases, but they will continue putting the topsoil down. And I think the other discussion point on that is how we protect that area, and whether the sort of rope and stakes will be sufficient to keep dogs off or other people. And so that's an ongoing discussion we're having with BVVS just to try and secure that. So it won't be Harris, but maybe we have something a bit more robust than a rope. But yeah, all going well on the Stamford Brook sewer site. On the UTX site, the tunnelling has stopped, it's finished, so that's good news. But the hoardings will stay up because they do have to now relocate the utilities. So as I said last time, I think the UTX site will be remained hoarded off until 2029, when the station is complete. So that's the update from HS2, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on this section, Stephen?
Yes, it's very good news, as Steve says. Whatever the decision is on how to protect the sewer site, which has had such damage and now has got to recover, can there be plenty of signage, not just one or two, but plenty of signs explaining why it is blocked off in whatever way you decide to block it off, please, to enable it to recover?
Certainly, Chair, we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Fine. Item 3, green flag application.
Yeah, Vicky Abel's going to take this, Chair.
Great, thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Vicky Abel. I'm the Wormwood Scrubs Development Manager. So a draft green flag management plan has been written for the Scrubs. If approved, it will be submitted in January next year, with judging due to take place later on in the summer of the same year. The management plan sets out how the site is managed on a day-to-day basis and how it meets, or how it will meet, the criteria for the green flag judging. This is in line with the council's aspirations to have all its parks and green spaces accredited with the green flag status. And the green flag is a mark of quality in terms of providing a welcoming, safe and secure and well-maintained space. In order to retain the green flag, the site has to be maintained to a high standard, as it will be reassessed in subsequent years.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on green flag? Miriam?
Well, one point and one question. The point being that it's clearly a very detailed piece of work. So thank you very much for that. And I think it's obviously a very good endeavour that the Friends would definitely be behind. My only question was is sort of to what extent the ID Verdi ecologist, Kate McVeigh, has been sort of roped into this process or not.
Yeah, I believe Kate would have been consulted as part of the process. She works really closely with Steph, who is like the park manager, basically. So yeah, she would have been consulted on that. And the management plan does represent how ID Verdi interact with the council to maintain the site. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Stephen.
Yes, I want to reiterate, very good plan, definitely go forward. It does say in it that the members of this committee and indeed the Friends have seen the management plan. I am not convinced that I have ever seen the management plan, and I would welcome seeing it. I've asked for it, as have colleagues, quite often over the last about 9 months. 12 months, probably. I think we were told we could have it after February, after the new contract, but we haven't seen it yet. Can that be circulated, Chair?
Osama?
Yeah, just to comment on that point, just in terms of the process around submission. So the application needs to be submitted around middle of January. So if this committee is happy to approve the submission of that application, then we will circulate it to the rest of the Friends, and then you can have your opportunity as a member of the Friends to give your input on the plans. You might have sort of certain suggestions for how to improve it, or things you might want to take away. We're totally open to that. And so then before we submit in mid-January, we'll have collated everybody's feedback, factored that into the management plan, and then submitted.
Chair, certainly not wishing to hold up the green flag application, simply wishing to note that we haven't actually seen the management plan and would welcome doing that and will comment.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, I think it's the work plan, isn't it? So it's sort of semantics here. It's the work plan on what work is required on the scrubs, month by month is what you're after, I believe, Stephen. Yes. So we'll get that to you, and apologies we haven't sent it earlier.
Fine. Thank you. Okay, well, so pending the work management plan being sent round, I'd be happy to approve green flag. Lovely. Great. Item 4, site entrance improvements. Osama, I think this is you.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Chair. So my name is Osama El Amin. I am the Trust Manager, and I'm just going to give you an update on the site entrance improvements. So at the last committee meeting, myself and Vicky had presented 2 options for spending the £110,000 grant from the OPDC to renovate some of our site entrances, particularly one off Scrubs Lane, which is very popularly used, one off Woolston Street and one off Braybrick Street. So we presented those options at the last committee. The highest specification quote was selected, and that required the trust to match a £20,000 contribution. So after that meeting, we put our heads together and we decided to go and look for a few more quotes, just to make sure that we were being as diligent as possible when kind of deciding which contractor would be able to award those works. So we sought another quote, and a contractor who was on the framework for the council came in for the same specification of work, and that quote was significantly cheaper, cheap enough so that the trust wouldn't have to make a contribution. And so we've decided to go ahead with that contractor, and we're hoping for that contractor to begin works on site the week commencing 23rd of January. Should take roughly 4 to 6 weeks to redevelop those entrances. We're hoping to start with Scrubs Lane, then Woolston Street, then Braybrick Street. But that is to be finalised with the contractor. It just depends on the weather and whether or not we have any access issues that emerge between now and then. So that's just really to note, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think noted, unless there are any questions on that. Hedge laying programme, I think that's back over to you. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Councillor Stanton. Councillor Sanders, I don't know if you're speaking, but I can't hear you. I don't think you're muted.
Not muted. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, perfect.
Sorry, Crisp was playing up. So just to confirm that originally the quote that we were going to go with was, I'm rounding, 130,000. So this quote is presumably £20,000 or so less than that. Is it? And it's exactly to the same specification, but 20% cheaper.
That's correct. Yeah.
Wow.
So you're probably wondering why that. What the difference was there.
Yeah. It kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So one of the main differences was the way that one contractor uses the spoil on site. So when you dig up a certain amount of earth that the pathway has to be created on top of, if you dispose of that on site, it's a lot cheaper than doing it off site. So that was a big cost in terms of the difference between the two. Also, the economies of scale of the other contractor was a lot larger. And so they have basically more tools and better access to tools and equipment than the other contractor. So that sort of meant that they're able to complete the works kind of quicker and for cheaper, essentially.
Okay, thank you. That does actually make sense. So thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
No, good question. Thank you. Okay, Osama, a hedge laying programme.
Thanks very much, Chair. So as we know, the meadow area in the northern part of the Scrubs is one of the most ecologically abundant areas of the Scrubs. And so thankfully, by the hands of some very, very keen volunteers, definitely the hands of the Friends as well, some of the hedge was being laid to the eastern boundary. Some great work that was kicked off by, I think, Emma, who was really instrumental with that. And so, her energy, her momentum meant that about 80 meters of hedge were laid earlier on this year. And so that was carried through. We hired Groundworks and in conjunction with our ecology advisor, Kate McVeigh, to come and crack on with that work. So roughly about 125 meters of hedge has been laid now. And so we have roughly about another 325 meters that need to be laid in order to fully protect the area. So essentially this work needs to happen between now and the ground nesting season, which commences in March. And so we think within that time, we could lay probably around another 200 meters of hedge. So we're seeking £19,200 from the trust, approval from the committee to lay that extra 200 meters of hedge. And then we'll make a call once the ground nesting season starts. We'll see how much of that 200 meters we have laid. And we will either come back to the committee for further funds to be attributed towards that project, or I will do some fundraising externally once we have a look at the accounts and see where we are financially. We might be able to do some external fundraising to gap up the rest of the hedge, so to speak.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Stephen?
Thank you very much, Sam. I'm delighted you're getting on with this. And as you say, Emma and her volunteers have played an important role, and I know that she needs plenty of notice to get them lined up to work, so with dates and so on. And it's January and the weather permitting. I wanted, please do that, thank you. I wanted to clarify whether the 19,200 was for the remaining 325 meters or just for the about 200 meters. If it's the former, I think it's a fair price. And if it's the latter, I think it's very expensive.
Yeah, so it roughly costs about £96 per meter of hedge to be laid, which is an awful lot of money. So this is for 200 meters, 19,200 for 200 meters.
Yes, I think I'm agreeing with you that that's a lot of money. Okay, thank you.
And that's why I think it's quite crucial to have a think about where we are financially as we go into the new financial year, and then make a plan whether or not that's seeking funding externally. We can come up with a plan to gap up the rest of the hedge before the financial year ends.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, Stephen. It's one we've discussed internally, because it does seem, I mean, I had no concept of how much a hedge cost. I had not expected it to be quite this high. I think to continue with the next 200 metres from January to March, I'm sort of happy to progress with. But yeah, as Osman says, I think we then need to think about the future of the hedge project and how else we're going to fund it. Stephen, did you want to come back in on that?
I did, yes. I do think £96 per metre is very expensive, and I wondered whether Osama could use his brilliant alternative contractor methodology to good effect here, because I do think it does need laying all the way to the south end of the diagonal path, if I can describe it that, which is roughly where the hedge runs. I also, as members of the committee will know, I'm sceptical about any more hedging anywhere else. This serves a good purpose. I'm not sure it serves a good purpose almost anywhere else on the scrubs. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the hedge? Are we happy to approve the expenditure for the 200 metres of hedge? And then we'll review from there. Good, that looks like a lot of nods. Fine, let's say that 200 metres is approved, and then let's think creatively about the remainder of it after that. Great. Item 6, Kensington Dragons update. Osama, I think this is you again.
Back to me, thank you, Chair. Yes, so as many of the people on this call will know, the Kensington Dragons Football Club, very community-centred club. As the name might indicate, they are somewhat based in Kensington, but they have a lot of operation in sort of around West London. They're actually part of the Middlesex League and the Harrow League, I believe, as well. So they have a number of teams. They have one of the only girls teams as well in West London, which should be noted. And so they have entered into a funding and lease agreement with the Trust as of 2021. And part of that agreement involves the resurfacing of the pitch space that we've got at the Linford Christie Stadium, as well as the extension of pitch provision to the southern boundary of the Linford Christie Stadium site. So to date, they've spent about £50,000 on various different surveys, consultant support, legal fees, and they've come up with various different infrastructural kind of necessities that we need to kind of look into, or they need to look into in order to progress that development. So really, this is just a note to say that they've done very well to get to this point. They've spent a considerable amount of money, and in line with the lease agreement, they're on track to be able to complete that capital works project, which myself as trust manager will monitor very, very closely, and I'll feed back into the committee as and when they make progress with that project.
Thank you very much. Stephen.
Apologise for coming in on almost everything. I think the Kensington Dragons project is very important to us all. And as Osama explained, they're called Kensington Dragons, but they operate throughout West London. And we mustn't forget that although this is a committee of Hammersmith and Fulham, Wormwood Scrubs Charitable Trust is for the benefit of the whole population of the metropolis. And that sometimes does get overlooked, particularly by some of our contractors, I think. I wondered, Osama, if you knew when they hope to complete the project and whether we could be reminded what the total cost is and what our contribution is, which have been in previous papers, but it's 2 years ago or more.
Yeah, so the funding agreement, I believe, is a 2-year agreement. Steve Hollingworth might be able to shed a bit more light on that if I'm incorrect. And the trust's contribution is £100,000. Steve, is that correct?
If I can come in, Chair, I don't think that is correct. I think we're in for 250, and obviously the agreement is for the life of the lease, and the funding decreases in terms of depreciation on payback as we go through the project. So you know, if we develop the project and took out Kensington Dragons work, we'd have to pay the full amount back initially, or the developer would, and then it reduces as time goes on. But I think the easiest thing to do is to dig out the papers and recirculate them on what we've presented in the past, so people can refresh their memories. But it is 250 our contribution.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any more questions on this, or fine? Well, that is noted then. Steve, over to you for the Thames Valley Harriers Clubhouse.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we did bring this to you last time. Some of us met Thames Valley Harriers representatives, and they outlined what they wanted to do in terms of developing their clubhouse for their members, but also for the wider community, particularly about catering, toilets, and also working with ID Verdi on the ecology centre or meeting place. Obviously, we asked for further information. Not obviously, we did ask for further information from them on their funding and how they were going to fund it, and their accounts, which we did circulate to the committee for comment. Had some positive comments back on that. I think where we are now is that if you're happy, that we're happy to grant them the 40,000 they want. However, we still need to agree the terms of that grant, and I'm suggesting that you delegate it to officers if you're happy to do that, because I think there's still a lot of discussions to have with them. For example, they were talking about getting a trial caterer in to see, how viable it was and what opening hours they could actually do and make a return, or certainly not lose any money. So I think there's more work to be done on this, and maybe even meet the representatives in the new year. So that's where we are, but it's whether you're happy to approve that 40,000 subject to agreeing the terms of the funding agreement.
Thank you, Steve. And I think we've probably all put in our challenges around Thames Valley Harriers and what we'd like to see before we are truly happy to go ahead. But on the basis that you are asking all of those questions and trying to find out as much information as possible from them, are we happy as a committee to approve on the basis that we still have questions, but they're being worked through? Stephen?
Yes, we are happy. I would just say that the comments in the LDT report, which I'm sure we've all read and which we're not going to discuss in detail, are full of the two things most wanted on site are a cafe and toilets, and this will achieve both. So let's hope that we and they can make it work, because if they can't, it's nobody else is going to be able to either. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stanton? I'm picking on you just because you raised some questions last time, but that's fine if you don't have anything to raise at this point.
I don't have any questions specifically, other than really to comment on your comment, which is that we're happy to agree, subject to still having one or two reservations. I just want to be clear that should those reservations turn into actual issues, that we wouldn't be committing ourselves overly at this stage. If the simple question is to approve yes or no, then yes, but subject to.
I think that's where we are. And Steve, can you just confirm that? I think we're saying yes in theory, but there are a couple of issues that we need to iron out. That I think we're all on the same page about.
That's right. It was saying yes to the grant, subject to agreeing, the appropriate community access. Really is what the main concern is now. I think on opening hours and etc. and making sure people can use the facility. So we would build that into any agreement before any funding was handed over. And I say it may be worth meeting them again on site just to discuss that once they've had the trial period with their caterer.
Thank you. All right. Well, with those reservations, is this approved by the committee? Great. All right, thank you very much. Item 8, Liverpool City Stadium proposed by the Friends of Wormwood Scrubs, and this is for noting as opposed to a full discussion. But Stephen, over to you.
Thank you very much. We have presented the paper, and I have accepted the chair's request that it just be noted today and discussed fully at our next meeting, on the basis that there are so many other things today that need to be discussed, and there's a football match to get to, even if England isn't playing in it. So if we find that we get through the other items very quickly and people want to revert to this, I'm happy to speak to it. If not, I hope it will be one of the main items next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And yes, that's it. It was just time-wise, when it arrived, we already had quite a full agenda. So I think lots of time now, so people got a chance to read it all properly, and then we can discuss it more fully at the next meeting, which I think is the most sensible option. So thank you for being agreeable for that. Lovely. Okay, item 9, vehicle access off Scrubs Lane. Osama.
Thank you, Chair. So in accordance with the agreement that the committee has made to trial an event on the Scrubs later on this year, we are thinking about ways that we can have safe vehicular access onto the Scrubs with the least ecological degradation or any sort of damage as possible. And so we have resolved to commission a feasibility study into 2 entrances off Scrubs Lane. It's looking likely that the top entrance in the northeast corner, which runs parallel to the National Rail demise, which we lease to National Rail, that entrance route will most likely be the kind of least problematic and the easiest access route for large HGV vehicles to access the Scrubs. That feasibility study is due to deliver its results next week. So I'll share the results with the committee, and that will also form the basis of any specification that we need to carry forward in terms of redeveloping that entrance for that vehicular access. So really just to note that.
Thank you very much. Fine, okay. Item 10, a secret cinema proposal for summer 2023. I think we've got Kath Pomlin, who's the community manager for Secret Cinema, presenting the proposal. Is that right?
I'm just seeing if she's on the call, Chair. Certainly Emma Gerard is from events as well, but this is, following on from the last time Secret Cinema presented. They've gone away and done a lot more work, looking at the site and plans and proposals to bring forward a show for next summer, and also looked at the community benefit and social value, and the impact on the local community, positive impact. So they're here to present their proposals if we have them with us. Emma, do we have
Hi, good evening. I think we were just a little bit early on the agenda. I think they were going to come in at 6, but just bear with us if you don't mind, as they will be standing by. And
Emma, do you want to get in contact with them and we could go to item 11?
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson, will do.
Fair. Fine. Item 11, ecological baseline and monitoring programme. Vicky, can I go over to you for this, please?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so this would be a year-long study involving a number of different surveys to be conducted at different times of the year. The surveys would include assessments of birds, bats, hedgehogs, reptiles and invertebrates, and vegetation. The timetable would also allow for an interim report to be submitted in around August of that year to make sure everything is going to plan and to give us an idea of what's been happening and what is still to come. The plan is to continue these surveys in subsequent years to build up long-term records and monitor trends which will inform management decisions. The cost of the initial year's work is £9,000, which would pay for the community and ecology advisor, who is Kate McVeigh, and obviously works on the Scrubs, to spend 1 day a week working on the audit. That would be for the first year of the assessment, and then following on from that, there will be a cost for ongoing years work of the audit to build up those records and to monitor the state of biodiversity on the scrubs.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on the ecological baseline and monitoring programme? Miriam. Miriam, I think you're muted.
Not a question, just a sort of point that from the Friends' perspective, this is another very good initiative. And I think I can speak for the Friends when I say we've sort of, the new information here, I think, is that this is going to be carried on a multi-year basis, and that sounds like very good news. So thank you for that, Vicky.
Thank you. Great. Anything else? Fine. Let's note that. I'm going to skip around a little bit. Vicky, is the local nature reserve piece?
Yep.
Is that just you talking through it? Is there a presentation with it?
Yeah, that's quite a quick thing as well.
Fine. Let's do 13 and 14 whilst we wait for Secret Cinema.
Okay, so the local nature reserve, I think in the notes that were the report that was sent out ahead of the meeting, you would have seen a couple of plans that show the areas. I think there was a plan that showed the existing site of interest for nature conservation, which is the sink boundary. There's also the local nature reserve boundary that exists on site already, which is basically the woodland areas to the edge of the site and also the central copse. So the proposal is to extend the local nature reserve boundary to include the meadow, and that is shown on a different plan and hatched red. This is the most floristically diverse area of the scrubs, and it attracts a wide variety of birds, making it one of the most sensitive areas and one of the areas most in need of protection. So the main benefit of having a local nature reserve declared is that it would allow for bylaws to be introduced, which could help limit access at certain times. Of course, the issue of enforcement of those bylaws is very tricky. And we would need to be, consider over time, they would need to be considered over time with improved signage and education. So basically the process of applying for the local nature reserve would take approximately 6 months, and just includes drafting up a number of documents, which are a declaration document, an ecological management plan, a boundary map, and the bylaws. But once the documents are approved, the LNR can be announced, and it would be formally recognised by Natural England.
Okay, great, thank you. I think we're all quite keen to move forward the application for the local nature reserve status. So unless there are any questions, happy to approve that. Great, approved. And then Vicky, do you want to take us through tree planting, and then we'll move on to the various presentations we have?
Yeah, so there's the HS2 trees that will replace those lost through the work on the SBS site. It's taken quite a while, but we have now got the 15 trees approved with HS2. They're going to fund those. There's a plan in the documents that shows, I think, 5 or 6 different points of where those trees will be planted. And we've also agreed with them some hedges to be planted as well as part of the same works. So they've been approved. The only thing is that the supplier is warning that there will be a slight delay to the delivery of those trees, but we were hopeful to get them early next year and get them in the ground. Red Squirrel will plant the trees, and we'll organise a volunteer planting day for the whips.
Great, thank you very much. Miriam.
Yeah, just a quick question on the whips, it's not totally clear from the map. Am I right in thinking that the whips and the new hedging will be right on the boundary with the railway?
It'll be close to the boundary, yeah, because we can't get too near to that fence line because we can't have anything that's going to overhang or anything. But yeah, in the area where the horse chestnuts were, in particular, we'll do a lot of hedge planting along there and just try and screen that boundary fencing, really.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a sort of a long sort of stretch of work to be done along there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's gapping up the whole of that northern boundary, basically. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. All right, Councillor Stanton.
Thank you, Chair. Just to really, we're talking about economies of scale and the advantages that they can bring with the entrance costs earlier. I was just wondering whether there was any scope here, since there's hedging mentioned, to kind of roll this into the other hedging plans to kind of reduce costs given the expense of the hedging.
Thank you. Osama, was that you coming in on that, or was that going over to Vicky?
Vicky,
Don't mind.
Go ahead.
One of you jump in.
I don't mind. I think, yeah, that's a good idea. I think talking to Kate, who will organise the volunteer planting day, she has some other whips coming in as well. So it's like there'll be a planting day, probably may need more than one day for doing the HS2 whip planting, but she's got some other whips coming in as well. So I think, there will be more than enough.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But let's have a look at that offline. Brilliant. All right, thank you very much. Okay, well, let's revert back to item 10 in the manager's report then, the Secret Cinema Summer 2023 proposal. So is it Kath that we've got presenting, who's the community manager from Secret Cinema?
Hi there.
Hi, Kath. Welcome to the meeting. I'm Councillor Sanderson. I'm the chair of the meeting. Looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. Just for the purpose of the meeting and for everyone who's watching at home, which I'm sure they are in their droves, could you just introduce yourself and say who you are before you speak, everyone from Secret Cinema?
Yes, so I'm Kat Tomlin. I'm the community manager at Secret Cinema.
I'm Kylie Morell. I'm the production and locations director at Secret Cinema.
I'm Amy O'Brien. I'm a producer at Secret Cinema.
I'm William Marr. I'm the location manager for Secret Cinema.
I'm Rob Howarth. I'm one of the production licensing team members.
Okay, you happy for me to start?
Yes, please do.
I'm just had a couple of technical issues, so if you could bear with me. I'm hoping that, can you all see a slide?
I can see a slide, yeah.
It says Gunnersbury Park.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so this was our first slide. I'm trying to share a trailer of our show in Gunnersbury Park this summer, which was Dirty Dancing. I'm having a few problems with it, so I'm just going to try once more, and then if I'm unable to, I think I probably won't be able to share that with you, but it gives you a bit of a feel of what our shows are like. No, I'm sorry. What we can do is we can send that out afterwards so that you can all see kind of what our summer shows are like from our show that we did in Gunnersbury Park this summer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to talk through kind of what our shows are like and the things that we do to organise our shows, and then also the impact that we have on the community and the community outreach, the positive benefits that we can have in the borough. So Amy's going to start us off, our producer, talking about how we safely manage our shows. Actually, before we do that, because I haven't shown the trailer, I would just briefly explain that our shows, we recreate the world of a film. So the audience get to wander around that world, they get to interact with characters from that world, they have all sorts of tasks and adventures to do, and for an hour, a couple of hours, and then that culminates in a screening of the film, and it's an enhanced experience of the screenings. So various things like actors might act out moments from the scenes while that film is playing out. So that's what a secret cinema experience is like. But as I say, you can watch the trailer and then that will kind of make it a little bit clearer. Anyway, so, and then on to Amy, safe management of events.
Great. So as an established events company with over 15 years of experience running these large scale productions, we take health and safety extremely seriously. It's our top priority. So we have a dedicated site operations team. They lead the safe management of the event site throughout the residency, and we implement a strict 1:20 ratio of staff to audience or above. We have a site security team present 24/7 during the residency. That's all the way through from the build to the D-rig and the get out. And then alongside that is the show security team, of course, who are present sort of during the operational hours. Over the years, we've also built strong relationships and positive ones with TfL, and we're in regular communication with them during the planning and delivery phases of the event. Just going to hand over to Will for this one. Oh, sorry, was it? I think Will.
No, I think it's me. So one of the key considerations is is being neighbourly while we're on site. There's two main levels of impact or areas of impact that we have to be mindful of. One of which is our noise planning. We work with our acoustician Lindsay. She's been working with us for a number of years now on all of our projects. She works very closely with our sound team to design a sound system which really focuses the sound generated by the event into the area that the event is for, and we minimize and mitigate the spill out of the site using various different sort of sound technologies, which are a bit above me, but the ability of our sound team to really control the sound levels is quite amazing. We've got Lindsay and her team going out just either side of Christmas to take some background noise readings, so we know what levels we're working with. And we take into account when designing the site, our nearest noise residences, noise sensitive residences, and other stakeholders as well. It's a key consideration for us, and it's built into everything that we do. The other things that we will do is have on-site meetings with members of the local authority, environmental health teams, to discuss noise levels with them, and any sort of testing that we need to do, we will do in conjunction with them so that we sort of minimise that. And keep it under control. And then I wasn't on the last meeting, but I understand there were some questions around how we manage light spill from the event. So this picture is taken from a previous site that we've worked on. It was a study that was undertaken by our lighting team. And so obviously we sort of have two types of lighting. We have show lighting, which we use for the events themselves. And then once the event is finished and all of our audience have departed, we have a sort of daily state, which is called lights off. And lights off is where basically everything that is non-essential for security purposes overnight is turned off, and any remaining lighting systems for security reasons, where we possibly can, we use movement sensors so that only lights come on if they are triggered by somebody moving past them. We do run 24-hour CCTV systems, and that's got it can work with night vision cameras, so it works in low levels of light, meaning we don't have to have lights on all the time. It won't be like a sort of depot with lots of lights on at all times. If we do have any security or floodlighting towers, we limit the use of those so that they only really hit the ground at about 1 meter outside our fence line, just for security on the outside of the fence line. But that's where we limit it to, and you might not be able to see it on this picture, but we will share it with you afterwards. You can see the sort of the lines where the fence lines run, and that's where the lighting is sort of focused within the event site itself. And what we will do is we'll put all of that onto a CAD plan and monitor and measure that with our lighting team, so that we're in control of that at all times and minimizing the spill out into any of the woodland or hedgerow areas.
Amy?
Yeah, so the proposal for summer 2023, we'd be looking to begin our build on the 3rd of July, and that would run for 4 weeks to the end of the month. We would then run a kind of week where we would be testing the show. So we would have a closed dress rehearsal on the 25th, first preview on the 27th, second preview on the 29th. We are proposing that we would run the show for 3 weeks. We would run Tuesday through Sunday, with Mondays being dark. So you've got the dates there, and then the final week would be dismantle. So that would take you from the 21st of August through to the 27th of August.
Yeah, so we've chosen the northeast corner of the park for our site demise. We've been liaising with Catherine and Emma in the events team, and we've all come to the agreement that that is the best place for us. Even though our site will be fenced off, we're going to be maintaining a 10-metre perimeter around our demise for emergency vehicles and for members of the public if they want to walk their dog around our site. So we won't be restricting anyone's access in any way.
And our audience ingress, they will come from White City. So all of the comms that go out to audience and signage will be that they will walk from White City up along Scrubs Lane, and they will enter the park where that red arrow is there. Oh, and the same when they're leaving as well. They'll take that same route back to White City. So obviously, it's really important that we liaise with residents. So we have regular residents meetings. We've had our letter drop has gone out to residents today, and we have already had some engagement from residents signing up to our residents meeting next week and signed up to our residents mailing list. And we've also got a web page which is exclusively for residents that is regularly updated with all the details of all of our plans. And we have staggered entry times when the audience arrive, so they're not all arriving in one go. And the same with egress. Audience, we have found, tend to leave kind of not always right at the end of the show. We have a stewarded area for vehicle pickup, but most of our audience do come on public transport. We also have a dedicated hotline for residents, community hotline. So this doesn't take you through to customer service or anything, that's straight to the community team for any concerns during the show build and during the live show. And we offer tickets for local residents. And then we also, I'll be talking about this a little bit later, offer community engagement. So we engage with local schools with visits and workshops, and also community groups. And again, you know, we're really happy to take on board any suggestions from you of sort of community groups that might benefit well from our residency. We also have a recruitment drive to recruit locally. So our aim is that we employ at least 30 people from within the borough. And we've got a range of departments that they can work in. So security and bars, with our stewarding and with our front of house. And we pay at least the London living wage. And that's a process that's really important to us. We will support local people through that recruitment process. We also offer work experience for 18 to 25-year-olds, again, from within the area. We can offer 10 work experience placements, and actually these are really fantastic opportunities for young people to experience the live events industry. So they spend 2 nights with us, and they'll shadow different departments from front of house, operations, stage management, and we've had great success with our students. Quite often the work experience students go on to paid employment. So the quote from Noah there at the bottom, she was work experience at our summer show Dirty Dancing in Gunsbury Park, and she has recently been working at our inside show in Wembley, Guardians of the Galaxy, because she was so brilliant on her work experience. We also, for each of our shows, we always fundraise for a charity. So we would be asking you and the local residents what are some of the local charities that we might fundraise for. And we fundraise this through our preview shows and guest lists donations. We've already know about 3 local charities that in our previous stakeholders meeting that have been mentioned. But we're very happy to take on any suggestions for you of the sorts of charities we can engage with. And also, it isn't just about fundraising. We'd be really happy to engage with them, offer some site tours or workshops or anything that might fit in with what that charity is. For example, in Gunnersbury Park, we worked with the fundraise for Hogarth Youth and Community Centre, and we offered some of their young people the opportunity to come and visit the site. And then we have a range of community outreach, and again, that's bespoke to the borough and what community groups and schools might appreciate something that we can offer from all of our Secret Cinema experts. There's a picture here of some students in Ealing and Hounslow who came to a school's version of our Dirty Dancing experience. This show is in the summer holidays, so we're really happy to engage with schools before the schools break up, so we can take workshops into the schools, we can go to assemblies, we can run workshops for young people, we can also go and talk to school leavers about work experience or our local employment opportunities as well. And these are some examples of the sorts of workshops that we can run in schools. So we can take a group of our creatives and our producers. They did a couple of really great ones on Guardians of the Galaxy, introducing young people to how an immersive experience gets created. We also can run marketing and budgeting masterclasses, or we can run drama workshops, and that works quite well with the primary schools as well. So there's plenty of opportunity, we think, in Hammersmith and Fulham, and here's a few examples of the sorts of things that we could offer. But again, we're really happy to hear from you. You're the ones who know the borough, you know what the needs are. But I think the Summer in the City programme looks fantastic, and we could offer some workshops actually on our set. For example, we could run a forest school family workshop. The Lego group we've worked with before, we've got some amazing puppetry and makeup artists as well, which would be a really exciting thing for young people and families to experience. We can also offer events on careers and creative arts workshops, again on site, or visits from community groups, including dance classes. We've got lots of amazing choreographers here. And so I think I mentioned this earlier, we've got a dedicated webpage. So there's a screenshot of our one for Gunnersbury residents, which has all of the information that they need on there, including contact information, so how they can get hold of the community team by email or the hotline, and also, so importantly, how to book free tickets. So we were really pleased with Dirty Dancing and our community outreach there. This summer, we didn't have any noise complaints in our 3-week run, and the site was clear by 10:30 for each show. Audience demographic is not like a festival, so you get a range of ages, and our film title for this summer is a family-friendly film, age 8+. And our noise management 24-hour monitoring, as Rob has already talked you through. We had a dance class with one of the actresses who played Penny, which was fantastic. And as I've said, we'd had the site visit with the youth, Hogarth Youth Project. So we were really pleased with Gunnersbury Park. And there's a few stats of our community programme over the years. So since 2016, we've actually had 160 work experience and local employment positions. We've had nearly 2,000 students at student-friendly adaptations of the show. And we've raised £160,000 for charity partners. Many workshops, many workshops. This is an image of a costume workshop that we ran in Brent in October this year. Students really enjoyed that and got involved. And I won't read all of these out because I think I've talked for too long, but we've got some quotes here of other councils that we've engaged with and the positive comments that we have received from those boroughs. And that's it. Should we open up for questions?
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. and exciting to think about what some of the possibilities could be in terms of for the community. I think some of the biggest questions that I'm sure are going to come up are noise. I mean, interesting to hear that there have been no noise complaints last time round, and thinking about how to manage that and understanding fully what that would look like for residents. The impact on the ecology, I think, is probably going to be at the forefront of quite a lot of people's minds, and what that would look like. And then I think the route to and from the site, fine if it's all on Scrubs Lane, but I just how would you make sure that visitors didn't try and cut through the old Oak Estate or take other routes back if they felt like it was too slow to go down the same route as everyone else, if they get frustrated by big crowds moving in one direction?
Which take them?
I can take some of that if you want, Kath.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'll start with your last question first, because I can't remember the first question. But in respect of the audience members and their attendance and sort of sticking to the route, if you like. So what we do is we cheat a little bit with our audiences and we stagger the arrivals and the departures. With the arrivals, it means that not everybody is arriving en masse and at the same time. And because of that ability to allow people to sort of make their way from the tube station up to the park, what we find is our audience, we've got a slightly unusual audience in that they really buy into what we're trying to do. And like occasionally people will post spoilers online and other audience members will tell them off for doing so. And so they really buy into sort of sticking to the rules. So unlike events with less sort of audience buy-in, what we do find is that if we give them a route to stick to and we give them a station to attend, they really just do it. And I've done a number of these over the years, and it sounds like it's something that doesn't really work, but it just does. And so we're very confident that actually our audiences will stick to the rules that we give them, and it's unlikely that we'll have too many issues with them heading off into different directions. And ultimately, the entrance to the site will dictate the route that they take. What were some of your other questions? Sorry. Oh, noise and ecology.
Yeah.
So we have a number of different consultants who we use. Giles is our ecologist. We've worked with him on a couple of different sites now. He understands our shows and the different kinds of impacts that we might have. And as you identify, lighting and sound are the two main ones. He has been sort of engaged to start in the new year, working with us on an ecology management plan. I think we're just waiting on some bits of data being pulled together, and he will help us to mitigate any issues that might arise, a lot of which we've learned from a number of other locations and sites previously, whereby we don't point the lights into trees and hedges and bushes, and we keep them within the footprint of the event site. And the same with the noise management. As Kath said, we didn't have any complaints at all. Excuse me. And our most recent sort of indoor series of shows at Wembley, we did get a phone call from the local authority, but only to discover that somebody was having some sort of event in their van in the car park around the corner. It was actually nothing to do with us. So we take it very seriously. We do a lot of managing, designing and system programming before we start. Because ultimately the less issues that we have with the local residents and neighbours, the better for them and the better for us. So we're prepared to put the energy in ahead of time to manage that.
Okay, thank you. Can I go to Stephen, then Bora, then Miriam?
I hear your very comforting words, Rob, and I know that Secret Cinema are a well-managed and good organisation. But you want people to walk up and then walk back down Scrubs Lane, but I don't see how you will stop them walking on the Scrubs adjacent to your site, to the east side of your site, if that's what they want to do. And a few hundred doing that will cause a significant amount of damage. And I don't see how you will stop them. And you won't, of course, get complaints from the birds and the bats about the noise and the light, because they have no way of complaining. But you have no way of preventing them being disturbed by noise and light adjacent to local nature reserves. And nor does your ecologist. And I'd be interested to hear a little more on that, please. I have other comments too for later on, but as that's what we're dealing with at the moment, could I ask those?
Sure. I mean, it would be disingenuous of me to pretend that there is no impact from our event. I'm not pretending that for 1 minute. Our job is to minimize and mitigate the impacts that we do have, and the only way we can do that is planning and preparing our program of activities, our site layouts, and working with all of our different team members to do everything that we can to reduce those impacts. I won't pretend that will go to zero. And there's a balance that has to be found between the ability to put on events in parks. We're very fortunate that we're trusted by various different parks across London over the years to be able to do this. It's all about the planning and getting the right people involved. And with Lindsay, our noise consultant, and Giles, our ecologist, you know, we take it seriously, and we listen to them, and we do what we can.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kwan.
Hi, I am one of the councillors that represent the local ward, and one of the questions and concerns I'm sure the local residents are going to have is they're going to, in their minds, I think, compare this to the Notting Hill Carnival weekend, which, although it's not in our area, the sort of spillover at night time and so on is something that we have concerns with every year. And obviously they might look at this and think, oh, well, this is going to be 3 weeks of that. In terms of sort of just reassuring the residents and sort of comparing, it'd be useful if, you know, when you have the consultations with residents and on your, if it were to go ahead, the dedicated page, have the sort of numbers and timings. I know that it's not anything like it won't be the same sort of number of people going in and so on, but because it's a summer event and obviously the carnival happens sort of towards the end of August and so on as well, there may be comparisons in residents' minds, because that's always a fairly disruptive sort of 3 or 4 days for them.
Yeah, we can put that sort of information on the website, and it probably might be useful to include kind of demographic of ages as well that we're expecting, bearing in mind that it's a family-friendly film. That probably would be something that's useful and reassuring for residents.
Okay, thank you. Miriam.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Firstly, you mentioned that there might be a small number of the audience might be coming or leaving by car, and you suggested you'd have a sort of dedicated point for that. Where are you envisaging that would be?
Yeah,
I was on mute, sorry.
And that would be within the site demise. So the demise that we showed you in the northeast corner of the park, that would be, the parking would be contained within our site.
But there is probably no vehicle access to that point.
Sorry, could you just repeat that one? There
is no vehicle access off Scrubs Lane, except, you know, if you're going to build one specially, and that raises other questions, which I know Osama is looking into in another context.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember just before this, item 9 on the manager's report, we talked about Osman's going to, if we went ahead with this, would be looking at the feasibility study of the most appropriate route for the vehicular access to the Scrubs that we noted about half an hour ago. Miriam, sorry, back to you.
My second question was, of all the places where you've had events in the past, have you ever gone back to the same site, which I guess is a way of saying, have you been invited back or not?
So we did Romeo and Juliet at Gunnersbury Park in 2018, and then we were planning on doing Dirty Dancing the year that COVID hit. So we were actually going, we had a fallow year, and then we were going back to do Dirty Dancing, but then we ended up having to postpone that for 2 years running, and I actually managed to open it this year. And again, yeah, so we've done 2 shows in Gunnersbury Park, and recently had a debrief with Gunnersbury Park, which was well received.
And did you consider any other locations within Hammersmith and Fulham, or you focused only on the Scrubs?
At this stage, we were focused on the Scrubs because it was a park that we were aware of from previous discussions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stanton.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone, for that presentation. I have a question, really. It follows on, I think, from Miriam's question in terms of the infrastructure that's available in the Scrubs at the moment. Effectively, it's a greenfield site. Will you be bringing everything in and taking everything away, by which I am referring to, water, waste, electricity, etc.? So you will be, other than vehicular access, all you need from the Scrubs effectively is the space, and you will provide everything, or is there any infrastructure that you would anticipate that we might be responsible for providing for you?
Yeah, we would be anticipating, we would bring all of that in. That's how we operate on these outdoor shows.
So literally, if the vehicular access issue was resolved, you have everything that you need from the Scrubs.
Yeah, we bring in power, water, waste, etc. That would all be us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And presumably anyone who would be accessing it by car, it would be for accessibility reasons, not just because they, yeah, fine. Okay, thank you. Miriam.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask about, obviously you've got a lot of people visiting the site on a nightly basis. So, what do you envisage the impact on the site being, and then sort of, how long it will take to sort of restore it, and then potentially how long the start of the football season is delayed?
So, just as an example, at Gunnersbury Park. So the park. I don't know if anyone saw our event site was in the park this year, but I think there was, between us closing the show and de-rigging the whole show, which takes a week, I think there was a period of 4 weeks before they started to use the pitches again. This does depend on weather, though, as well, because we were fortunate that we had a very dry summer while the shows were on, whereas previously when we were in the park, it was a very wet summer, which it took a little bit longer for the grass to recover, but the grass recovered.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Has anyone else got any other questions? Fine. Stephen, I think you said you had some other comments, but I think you're muted.
I was aware that leaflets were dropped today, because I've had quite a few people make contact to say why they're contacting us. This hasn't even been approved yet. They're behaving as if it's a done deal and going ahead. And so I wanted to mention that. I've seen the leaflet because somebody sent it to me. And also Rob and maybe others of you continually refer to this as a park. It is not a park. It's a common, it's open ground. Your chosen location has on its north, east and west sides local nature reserves. And there was no reference in your leaflet to the Wormwood Scrubs Charitable Trust, who you are now asking to approve this, only to Hammersmith and Fulham. So having said earlier, which I really meant, that Secret Cinema are a good outfit with a good reputation, which you are, I felt that the content of the leaflet and the timing of it slightly reduced my appreciation of you. I'm aware that you met with strong opposition in Waltham Forest, which didn't go ahead, partly because of the opposition and partly because of COVID. Who knows what the reasons were? Anyway, it didn't happen. I suppose that we're going to be asked to vote on it, and I just wanted to say that the Friends of the Scrubs think that it's the wrong place for such a big event. Too many people, too much activity, despite your best efforts and the lightness of the evenings, too much light, too much noise, too intrusive on nature, and too disruptive to people's enjoyment of the peace and quiet and openness of the scrubs for 2 full months. And then, of course, the restoration for a month afterwards, which will mean that that biggish area needs to be roped off to keep people off while it restores. And it's a biggish area which is heavily used, not just for football, but by large numbers of walkers. So I just wanted to be out in the open with that. I have, should it be approved today, I have a comment also on the financial arrangements, which I've been made privy to, but won't discuss openly, which I'd like to share with Emma. I'm sure the events team have done a good deal in managing and planning this, but I wanted you to know that despite all you're doing and the very good community activities which you described, which I have no admiration for, that on behalf of the trustees of the Friends of the Scrubs, we can't support this initiative.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Fine. All right. Well, for the voting members, how do we feel about this? Councillor Kwan, can I come to you first?
Yeah, I'm in favour of approving. There are obviously concerns about traffic management and so on, but knowing the nature and the timings of the event, I actually think that the communication and the management with the local residents, which is what I asked about, will be really key. And then I think it would be good to have discussions about the community aspects of it, but I think there are opportunities for the residents that I'm in favour of.
Thank you. Councillor Stanton?
I think broadly I'm in favour of what Councillor, and second what Councillor Kwan has just said. I could possibly be persuaded otherwise, but I'm broadly in favour.
Thank you. And I think noting concerns about ecology and making sure that routes back, particularly from the site to on the preferred route, it would be good to discuss that further and see if there's additional staff that could be laid on or something to manage that route back to the station, so we don't have people wandering all over. But otherwise, I have to say, I mean, I think the historical events that we've had on the Scrubs, kind of being the car park for Winter Wonderland for all the caravans, I think actually it's a step in the right direction to have positive events on the Scrubs, given what's been before. So I'm also minded to approve. So thank you very much. That's going to be the end of this item. Stephen, I have heard your comments on this. So
I have one question. It's a question for
we've
somebody.
had quite a lot. Why don't you email it?
What will the ticket prices be approximately?
So yeah, can you?
I'm happy to have that answered, but again, Stephen did have quite a long time to speak.
No. Yeah, can you hear me now? Sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
So the average ticket price is to be determined and will obviously vary depending on the day of the week and the kind of ticket type that it is. We have sort of general admission and a VIP ticket, but the average ticket price that we're looking at the moment is around about £56.10.
Fine, but there will be, as you said, free tickets for a large number of residents. And again, it would be good to work with you on which community groups we feel could particularly benefit from some of the opportunities here. Because I think there are probably lots, and that doesn't have to just be LBHF as well. That could also be looking at RBKC, given that they neighbour or Brent. We have a shared service for our fostering service across RBKC and Hammersmith and Fulham, and that could be one of the groups that we looked at, for example. All right, thank you very much. Secret Cinema, you're very welcome to stay, but I imagine you may want to get back to your evenings. So can we move on to, so thank you for coming, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can we move on to the AEM master plan? And Vicky, I think this might be you.
Yeah, thank you. So just to recap where we are, we've been working with LUC, who were appointed back in 2019 as the lead consultant to develop the master plan and oversee its implementation. LUC have also produced a conservation management plan for the site and worked on a number of versions of the master plan. During that time, LUC have responded to positive and negative feedback to some of the proposals by adapting the plan accordingly. Following further consultation this summer, LUC have updated the plan to include recommendation from LDT's consultation. The latest version of the plan includes a SUD scheme to the southern boundary linked to a wetland habitat, more SUDs and swales to the northwest corner just to the south of Leicester's embankment. The plan also includes for a firm circular footpath in the south to allow greater access within the space, and hopefully this will encourage footfall away from the most sensitive areas. We need to remember that the focus of the plan is to deliver enhanced biodiversity on the scrubs, and HS2 will also need to approve this plan, and they will want to see how the plan will allow for biodiversity net gain. Biodiversity net gain is a way of measuring biodiversity levels of a site before a project starts, and again after improvements have been made, so that we can calculate the level of biodiversity improvements. The inclusion of SUDs and swales will have a positive contribution to the biodiversity net gain, as it will create a new habitat on the scrubs. An ongoing and very important element of the plan is the 10-year management and maintenance plan. This will improve the woodland and the meadow habitat that already exists, basically through better management and reducing unwanted vegetation to allow increased light into the understory. The plan also includes for tree planting in a number of different areas, including fruiting and flowering trees, and improved signage along with the entrance enhancements. So that's basically on the plan. I think we're LUC going to do presentation.
Yes, indeed.
Great, thank
if
you.
you like. Yep, hi. So my name is Ben Shakespeare. I'm an associate landscape architect at LUC. Thank you, Vicky, for the introduction. And yeah, I will share the presentation. This one. Right, then you should be able to see this. So I think this was probably shared to the team ahead of the meeting, so I won't go through and read everything. But needless to say, we've carried out a lot of consultation on these proposals, starting by asking people what they'd like at Wormwood Scrubs, and for example, visiting schools and explaining the importance of biodiversity, finding out how many children actually use Wormwood Scrubs, and it's not as many as we thought it might be. We carried out a co-design workshop where people were very much involved in suggesting ideas, where they'd like new habitats, what they'd like to see, and of course various consultation events at the stadium. The master plan has evolved over time, as you'd expect, and we've refined the proposals and the content following the sort of various consultation events. So for example, we tried to follow the more wild than tamed philosophy. We opened up the site a little bit to ensure that any of the sort of tree planting proposals weren't going to block the most important open views that people really like at the scrubs. We took out the pond, we removed the tree avenue, and we relaxed the layout of the orchard. So that was the sort of plan that was consulted on this summer. But following that and a meeting last week, we've created better habitats, better sort of connections between habitats. We've reduced the density of tree planting in the area to the north of the prison to give that a more open feel. We've added the new paths which are going to be built shortly to improve the access from the main entrances. We've added some runways for the model aircraft. We've added the swales, particularly along the south of the scrubs. And we've also added back the pond, which, due to its sort of importance in terms of biodiversity, is seen as a very important element to include in the master plan. So we'll just look at these proposals in a bit more detail. This is a view of the master plan as it stands. And this is available in a sort of larger format as well, if anyone would like to take a closer look. And this includes sort of some of the management proposals for the woodland, the meadow, next generation of tree planting, a series of easy access paths, and the pond, as well as areas of woodland, and other features, the orchard in the western corner. Now, looking at the woodland management, woodland management is essential for the creation of a biodiverse woodland. Sadly, the woodlands around Wormwood Scrubs have had very little or no maintenance since they were planted. So all the trees are of a sort of similar age, and there's very little light coming through to the understory. Now, best practice woodland management thins out the trees a little bit, creates a bit of an opening in the tree canopy, and allows that understory to develop. Now, we wouldn't do all of this at once. The management of the woodland areas will be very much phased over a 10-year period, just to take a small section of each woodland in each year, so that the impact is minimised. Now, everyone appreciates the importance of trees, and creating the sort of next generation of trees is an important element of the master plan. The sort of standalone trees in grassland are an important resource for wildlife, bit of protection for birds while they hunt for food, and of course creating shade for humans as well. And with all the current sort of pests and diseases affecting trees, it's more important than ever to ensure that new trees are being planted following best practice and the most suitable species for the space. And as well as sort of trees in short grass, we'd like some trees kind of in the meadow areas, which then really creates the best of both worlds. Now, management of the scrub is also an important element. You can kind of see how the scrub has developed over the years, and it's a fascinating thing to watch. But ultimately, if it's left unmanaged, that area will just become woodland. And although woodland is good, the beauty of the scrubs is that area of scrubland, and it helps massively to give diversity to the site. So to maintain an area of scrub does require occasional maintenance to basically cut things down to ground level and let them grow up again. Again, like the woodland, this would be done on a cyclical basis, just taking a small section each year, and probably working on a sort of 3 or 5 year cycle, so that nothing becomes too big. As I mentioned, a lot of the scrubs is currently just short grass, and to improve the biodiversity of the site, it's important to have longer areas of grass, quite separate to the sort of scrub habitat. So the creation of wildflower meadows and longer grass is particularly important for insects and birds. And the idea isn't to just sow seeds, create like a sort of fancy wildflower seed packet view. It's about making the most of the plants that are already in the local area, investigating the content of the seed bank in the soil, and probably just assisting that with some carefully selected plants so that it looks like a natural meadow rather than a sort of true wildflower display like you might have in a park. And of course, that would be managed carefully through the year, normally cut twice a year, and arisings removed to reduce the fertility, but at the right time so that the seeds are dispersed. Now, the wetland is has obviously been a sort of controversial topic through the course of this project, and I believe even before LUC were involved, there was a sort of controversial suggestion of having a very large area of wetland on the scrubs. The creation of a sort of permanent water body would have a sort of very sort of beneficial effect on the biodiversity of Wormwood scrubs, and we've actually slightly relocated it from its original or previously proposed location a little bit further south, and linked into some new swales, so that it can be fed primarily by sort of natural rainwater. Now we could leave it at that, but that would mean that it would dry out in kind of most summers, which then kind of means it doesn't look quite so great, and it doesn't support that kind of continuous life cycle, and the sort of permanently wet habitat, which a lot of wildlife needs. So therefore, we suggest that it is topped up via a borehole, and I think it could look something like this. It's a sort of very naturalistic wetland area with native marginal planting, very soft edges, and it's something that people would want to actually sit next to, enjoy, and hopefully see a wider selection of wildlife than is currently possible at Wormwood Scrubs. Hedgerows were discussed earlier on in the meeting, and they're an important habitat, particularly good for nesting birds. So we are proposing some additional hedgerows, particularly on the north and northeast boundary, along with some improvements, maintenance, management of the existing woodlands, the existing hedgerows, because obviously with no management, a hedgerow tends to turn into a line of tall trees, which is generally actually not so good as for nesting birds, or as a barrier to control movement. So yeah, a bit of sort of management and some new hedgerows be an important habitat at Wormwood Scrubs. Vicky also explained how we'd like to incorporate some sustainable urban drainage features, and the aim of these is to help reduce flooding, particularly at the south of the scrubs, in a very kind of natural way, to help hold water slow down the flow of water, and hopefully ultimately help it to soak into the ground rather than coming into the sewer system and causing further issues downstream. I've included this picture to show what a swale could look like. And I think it's a sort of reasonable example. It's difficult because you want the swale to be, obviously it's going to be green. It's going to have some planting in it, some longer grass maybe. This one maybe looks almost a bit too manicured, but it gives the idea of how it can look, not too messy, not too neat. Sort of useful feature basically. And the way we've proposed them, they kind of come in sections, and then there's a section of pipe between each section so that you can cross over them easily without having to walk through it. There's always been support for information boards to promote the scrubs and kind of give some information about the ecology. So we're proposing a few ecological interpretation boards and some finger posts to help direct visitors around the scrubs and onto adjacent destinations. And I know access and paths has also been a slightly controversial subject, but I think people generally appreciate the need for some improvements to the existing path layout. And there are two ways we're proposing to improve the paths. The first is to provide a greater number of mown grass paths around the scrubs between different habitat types, through the meadows, around the pitches, which will help to spread the load of the visitors and cross-country runners and so on, and meaning that actually through the winter, the existing paths will be used slightly less, and all the paths, I can't say definitely, but that it'll help to reduce wear and tear across the site, basically. But there's also the need to provide a what we call like an easy access route for those with mobility constraints, and that would be of a kind of self-binding gravel, kind of natural product, timber edges, and like you can see in this picture, bottom right, this is a path that I installed just a couple of years ago down at Stammer Park on the edge of Brighton, and it fits very nicely into the landscape, and it's the sort of path that you'd see at a sort of National Trust site. So that covers the presentation. We can take a look at the master plan and I can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ben. Has anyone got any questions? Miriam.
Yeah, just on the swale and ponds, and also Ben, if you could make your screen a little bit bigger, it's a little.
So, for example, here you can see some of the swales proposed.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've gone in various iterations back and forth on this, but I think there's always been a concern that this is a very heavily trafficked area, because this is essentially where, I mean, people will come out of Linford Christie Stadium onto the football pitches. So I think there's sort of question as to whether that is I know it's an area that gets very wet, but also the sort of practicality of that. And then secondly, on the sort of position of the pond, and I know we've gone sort of back and forth on the pond, but I guess I'm just sort of questioning the location of the pond, because that's about the highest bit of the scrubs, and I think there had been sort of some discussion as to whether there'd be more of a wetland on the north west corner, which is a sort of very boggy area anyway.
Yeah, so looking on site, you can kind of see the paths that are worn through the grass, where people come out of the entrances. So I've very much aligned. So where you've got just a thin line, that's where the water would run underground through a pipe.
Right. Yeah.
So I've aligned those areas basically where people currently walk. So I think you can kind of quite easily kind of cross this and then sort of span out towards your pitch. We can refine these a little to maybe reduce the length of the swales in this area. And actually, even where the pipe is underground, you can still have a perforated pipe so that it's still kind of collecting water in that area as well. So yeah, we can refine that. Regarding the location of the pond, in the previous iteration, it was a bit further to the north up here. So I've pulled it down so that it's able to collect water from these swales like this. And one of the reasons it was the sort of support to have it in this area was really to sort of create a destination here. You've got easy access from the hospital and from kind of Braybrook Street. So it was seen as a sort of nice to have this sort of something that pulls people into this corner really. And again, it helps to sort of spread the load across the site. You know, where people currently do the sort of walk, the sort of long route, kind of up going through the area of scrubs, the existing sort of scrubland. It helps to sort of keep people down here a little bit and activates that site. The area in the northwest corner where it's currently wet, we believe that's mostly due to a broken land drain.
Right.
So the intention is to actually fix that, and then I think that area will be less wet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Stephen.
I think this is all very interesting, but we got the plan that we're looking at now yesterday sometime, and we have not previously seen the presentation that Ben's just been taking us through. And while I understand the need to press on because it is taken since, was it February last year till now to get from that iteration to this, I think that to have half a day to look at a plan and 20 minutes to go through a presentation and approve the most major changes to the scrubs suggested in a very long time is a pretty radical decision to be taking. So I would welcome the idea of a more detailed sit down of the committee with Ben very soon, I mean in January, for the purpose of understanding this properly and making any minor adjustments, suggestions, improvements that he might agree with once it was talked through, or we might say, yes, it's all splendid. But I think that we've not seen the presentation that he's just given, and we've had 36 hours or less to look at the plan, which, at least in my ability, is in very small type. So I'm not against anything, but I think we ought to look at it more carefully before saying yes to it, which doesn't stop saying yes to what we're asked to approve. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Fine, Ben, would you mind stopping sharing just so I can see everyone here? Fine, that doesn't look like there are any other questions or comments there. As you say, Stephen, it has taken a very long time for us to get to this point, and the reason for that was trying to get as much participation as we possibly could to feed into this, because as you say, it is significant it's the most significant change we're going to be making to the scrubs for a long time. That said, it is a bit disappointing that you didn't have longer to look through the plans. And so for that reason, I'm happy for us to meet in January to talk through the plans with Ben, get the Friends feedback on them with slightly more time, and then let's press ahead then. But let's try and make that in the first 2 weeks of January so that that's sorted quickly as possible.
Thank you very much, Chair. And if Ben could share with us the detailed presentation as soon as possible, that would be enormously helpful.
Fine, thank you. Steve?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, just thinking about the recommendation, Chair, whether we approve it in principle, subject to minor amendments which will following the meeting.
I'd be happy with that. Has that got agreement from the rest of the committee?
I'm fine with that, thank you.
Great. Fine. All right, lovely. Well, let's set up a date for that as quickly as possible. Thank you, Ben.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're muted, Chairman.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Didn't even need to pull you up on it. Thank you. Right, I think we've got financial forecast, which is Carmen, and then I think we've got the report from the LET, which I think Neil is here waiting very patiently to do. So can I go to Carmen for the finance update before we
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. So I'll just be brief. The budget for the year was set at 250,697. The current forecast is 36,000 less than that at 214,611. So there's that 36,000 is broken down by 11,834 income and 36,000 expenditure. The report is within, the finances are within the document. So are there any questions, Chair? We can go to questions if you wish, or I can expand a bit more depending on time.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Stanton.
Yeah, I just two very brief questions. The first of which relates, and this might be partly my lack of knowledge because I'm relatively new to the committee, about any costs incurred or due to be incurred from the master plan, which we just had presented to us. I don't know whether these will be costs falling into this budgetary period. And the other question is on the other side of income is, does this take into account any particular income that may or may not be realised from Secret Cinema?
Okay, I'll take your second question first. No, this income, this projection does not include Secret Cinema because I only include those items that are approved by the committee. So I don't presume approvals. So if Secret Cinema was to be approved, it will be additional income to this. The first question, sorry, you could just repeat your first item, sorry.
The first item was actually the item we've just had presented to us, the regeneration. Whether and this may just be my lack of knowledge historically. I don't know how that's been budgeted for, or indeed, I didn't ask in the previous session because I thought we'd ask it now. I don't know what sort of costs that this is actually going to entail, that's been pre-approved or otherwise.
Okay, so for my understanding, unless Steve says differently, is that this is part of the linked to Wormwood Scrubs. So we linked to HS2 Limited. So unless there's any consequential surveys or something that as part of the need of the Wormwood Scrubs, there'd be no financial impact in the accounts from this master plan.
Thank you. Steve, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, just to reiterate that really, the master plan which HS2 will fund is about biodiversity, so we need to persuade them that having paths will keep the biodiversity safe, and rather than people walking through it. So that's one issue, but it won't come into these accounts. and also Secret Cinema falls in the next financial year. So these accounts are forecast for this financial year. Yeah.
Thank you. Miriam, was that a hand up and then a hand down?
It was a hand up and then down because the point was made.
Thank you. All right, any other questions on the accounts? Fine. Thank you for clarifying all of the HS2 charges as requested. That's much easier to understand. So thank you very much for that. And I think we're just noting these, aren't we?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Carl.
Thank you, too.
Thank you. Right, okay. Neil, over to you for the LET report. And thank you for how thorough this is. Oh, Neil, are you still there?
Yep. Hi, sorry, I was just on the call to an officer.
No
Sorry,
problem.
yeah, so appreciative of time, obviously. So we'll just keep it, the notes did come out into the agenda. So obviously the main issues, we've had two since 26th of August. We had two travel encampments or tried possible sighting, and one where they was in the car park. On both occasions were there within an hour, managing to engage with the one that had parked up, and we monitored them until they successfully moved on. So that was good. I've given some stats there by patrols by location. So Wormwood Scrubs is the 6th highest in the borough for number of patrols, sitting at 823. It's only being beaten by 3 main high streets, a large housing block estate and a main ASB hotspot. And in terms of location in hours, Wormwood Scrubs is 2nd in the list, again only behind 1 major high street that the LET officers patrol. So apart from the 2 illegal encampments, everything else has pretty much been business as usual in the Wormwood Scrubs from a LET perspective. Engagements, abandoned vehicles, antisocial behaviour, dog issues and engagements. One thing I have shared with Stephen is dogs PSPO by the Community Safety Unit team is live for the consultation until mid-January, I believe. So I have shared that with Stephen, and I would urgently encourage everybody to play an active part in that and fill in those forms, because it's your PSPO that the council are working on. So your views are most welcome and very important to that. So please do go onto online and fill in that consultation. We have got a new person coming into the area. His name is Raoul, and he will be starting hopefully mid-January and to the end of January, sometime around there, dependent on final sign-off. But he is past his interview, he comes with him with a wealth of knowledge, so he'll be welcomed into the fold. Apart from that, I'll take any questions from anybody, or I'll leave you at that.
Thank you very much, Neil. That's helpful to know about the hours and where we are on the list for the scrubs. It had felt like there was quite a lot of LET time going into the scrubs, but helpful to have that quantified. Are there any questions for Neil about the LET? Fine, thank you. You might have included everything we needed to know, Neil, so thank you very much for that. And
fantastic. Thank you all. Thanks for including me.
Thanks so much. Great. Well, I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. So can I thank everyone for attending tonight's meeting? Stephen?
Can I bring up 3 very minor things under any other business,
yes,
please? The first is that last time we noted the delivery of sandy loam for footpath surfacing. I think it's not yet been used, but with the imminent quite heavy rain and warming after the frost, it may be needed, and that we should use it before the mud takes over. That's the first thing. The second time, Osama said that the LTD's recommendations on better litter picking and clearance echoed my comments, and he was going to review this with ID Verdi, and to hope that he's managed to do so and that it's getting better. And finally, to say that the committee having decided to go ahead with Secret Cinema, I'm sure the Friends will do all we can to make sure it's as little of the things that we are concerned about happen, and that it's as successful as it can be.
Absolutely, and I think the concerns are shared on Secret Cinema. It's not the Friends operating in isolation about those concerns. So, thank you. And on those other matters, Steve?
Sorry, Chair, I was just going to respond to the Sandy Loam. I did actually prompt ID Verde and Parks to think about that today, and they are doing some verti draining tomorrow, because it is soft, as it is hard, they can get the vehicles on there to do that. So yes, we're definitely pushing ahead with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Great. Well, I think that's it then. Thanks so much, everyone. Oh, Osama.
To say that I have been speaking to our grounds maintenance team, who have been paying closer attention to litter picking on the scrubs. But Stephen, yeah, please just get in touch if you feel as though that needs to be upped in any kind of way, or if you see a difference in that service delivery.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Right. Any more, or are we all good? Lovely. Well, those of you who are going to watch the football, enjoy. Those of you who are not, also have a very good evening. Thank you very much for coming, everyone, and see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.